Good morning. So, I feel a calling to talk about a controversial and misunderstood, misconceived subject. I want to talk about sex addiction. Um, I think that people that are dealing with sex addiction, which is really like any other addiction, but it has its own specific and unique traits to it, just like any addiction. But sex addiction really doesn't get any kind of recognition, and it's something that involves a lot of shame and a lot of like loneliness. Because when you are in a sex addiction, when you it is can be perceived as something that is negative or not real, or an excuse for certain behaviors, or an excuse to cheat on your spouse, or something that is dirty, or not accepted socially as other addictions might be, uh, kind of conceived as a health matter. But a sex addiction is something that is not really perceived as an addiction by any main um, revenues, and it can be very, very, very strong addiction. It is a very, very, very strong addiction, and um, and can be very difficult to overcome on your own, especially when there's shame and guilt involved, because you can't reach out for help. Even the people that are closest to you, let's say like your spouse or your parents, um, or even to reach out to therapists, it's having to admit that you have this addiction. It puts a barrier between you and the people that are closest to you. You feel like you have this thing that you have to hide from them, especially your spouse, because many times your spouse will feel like it has something to do with them. It ignites their own insecurities and weaknesses, and feelings of inadequacy. Well, if he's out or she's out, uh, feeling the need to have sex with others, then it makes me less worthy. I'm unattractive. So it really touches every single aspect of your life. And also, it's just like any other addiction, that when you have that urge to get a fix or a need or a draw to it, it takes over your whole being. It takes over your whole life. And at times it can take over, your ability to make a living, your ability to have meaningful relationships, because you have this thing that you have to hide from the other. And when you're in hiding, something that I've noticed about secrets, keeping secrets, is that when you have a secret, it kind of dampers your whole being. You become completely closed, because everything, you're so afraid of being open, because anything can touch that secret. So you completely close yourself off from the world around, so that you're not seen, because you're afraid of that coming out into the open. And especially when it's something that is so big, because it takes time. A sex addiction is something that it takes time from you. You have to disappear for a while. You have to connect with people that maybe otherwise you wouldn't connect with. Um, and in the end, after you have this draw to it, and afterwards you feel dirty, or you feel guilty, or you feel like, why did I have to do that? You feel shame in it. You feel um, inadequate. You feel, why do I have this? Why do I have to, what is wrong with me? And you feel so alone, because you don't have anybody really to talk about it with, that is close to you. Our sexuality, in any case, is something that is very private, um, and in society today, as a consensus, there's shame around it, especially with religions, and uh, it also has like in many places in the Western world, even which in modern world, it's like dirty, or if you, especially if you're a woman and you go and you have multiple partners, sex partners, then you can be considered, you know, a whore, or there's all sorts of words for it. And so a sex addiction really can be something that puts a person in a place where they're afraid to even reach out for help, because they're afraid that it's not going to be accepted in the world, or that even to the people the most close to you, which when you share your life with somebody, your spouse, that even in that place you can't be completely open with your partner, um, for many, yeah. And the thing with sex addiction is that many times it's formed when you are first exploring your sexuality, when you're a child, when you're a very young child, and you start, you start playing with yourself, or exploring your sexuality. You go into that place with yourself. You can form, and you see that it gives you relief, because sexuality, your sexuality is also a release. It also allows you not to have to deal with, it can be formed when you're early childhood, and then it is connected with your entire sexuality. You don't know your sexuality without that addiction or addictive feeling towards it, because it gives you a relief or a release, or um, it gives you a high. It gives you a exit from reality. You can go in with yourself and you can come to an orgasm, or you can fantasize about different things, and those fantasies can become, our mind doesn't know the difference between fantasy and reality. It experiences things the same. So if you go into a fantasy world that is better than your outside world, or your life, you can get lost in there, and it gives you like a fix, and you can become addicted to that fantasy, or to that fix, or to the release that it gives you. But it's a cheap release, because not only are you and okay, so it can either form in our early childhood, and then it is connected to our entire sexuality, or it can be connected later on in life. We can come to a place where we are going through a difficult time, or going through a depression, or going through something, and just like any other addiction, just like it would be with drinking or drug use, it uh, it fills a void. It allows us to go away from our not deal with our problems, go away from our life, and get like a cheap fix. Um, and the thing with that is that it is just that. When and I know that this is difficult, this is something a little bit difficult that I'm saying, for those of you who are going through it. I've also dealt with many addictions in my life, and overcome addiction to tobacco, addiction to alcohol, um, and marijuana, and behaviors, and we are addictive creatures. And addiction really allows us to. Our addiction is our um, attachment. And in order to experience this life, we have to form attachments. Otherwise, there's nothing that is accumulating in life, and there is no experience. So everything to a certain degree is an addiction. Addiction to behaviors, addiction to patterns of behaviors, addiction to foods, addiction. There's all sorts of addictions. Um, an addiction, really, when does it become something that is negative, is when it begins to interfere with our lives. It begins to overtake us as beings, and interfere with our quality of life, and takes over other aspects of our life, um, and causes us sorrow, or causes us pain. And so with the addiction to sex, it is it's a just like any other addiction. Let me connect back. Okay, I'm going to pause this for a minute so that I can reconnect, and then I'll come back. Okay. So the thing with sex addiction is that it really cheapens the experience, our sexuality. It's like if you were when you taste chocolate mousse once a month, then you really appreciate it, and it has like it can add so much value to your life, and it becomes like a treat or becomes something that is special and unique. And if you have chocolate mousse for breakfast, uh, um, lunch, and dinner, after a while you don't appreciate it, and it doesn't have that flavor to it. With our sexuality is even more so, because our sexuality is all inclusive. It is taking our entire being and sharing it with another person. It's a place of of being sacred. You're being vulnerable with another person, and when you take that and it becomes a an addiction, it really cheapens that experience and doesn't allow you to fully enjoy your sexuality. And when the sexual addiction is created when you are a child, then really your entire sexual experience in life is cheapened, and you don't have, if it, unless you are able to overcome the addiction, you don't have that the true experience of the true sexual making love experience with a partner that is all inclusive and loving and intimate. It cheapens the experience. And the thing with our sexuality, why the addiction is such a difficult addiction to overcome, could be even more so more so than many other addictions, is because it's something that we carry with us at all times. It's not like an addiction, let's say, to alcohol or to drugs, where it is an addiction that is outside of us. It's bringing something into us. Our sexuality is part of us, kind of like our addiction to food. See, we have to have food in order to survive. So when you are overcoming an addiction to food or addiction to sexuality, sexuality is a part of life. It's not something that you can just say, okay, I'm never going to have sex again, and just throw it out the door, and then you'd go cold turkey, and then, after a while you're done with it, like alcohol or like drugs. Um, your sexuality is part of you. It's an expression of you. It's something that you share with somebody that you love, and it is a natural part of life. It is the part of life that creates new life. And so it's not like you can take it and just throw it completely out the door. So it's even a more difficult, it can be a more difficult addiction, because you have to learn how to um, still have sex without the addictive part of the sex. So it's in that way it's very similar to a food addiction, where when when but a food addiction is you go on a diet. Something going on in the valley. I'll show you where I am in a minute. Oh, this is magnificent. I'll show you where I am right now. Look, see, there's the pillar. I think this is just so perfect, talking about sex addiction, when they have that pillar over there. And this is going up the other side of the valley. And I hiked up to, down there is the valley. Here are the doggies. And I hiked up to this little ledge that I like to come to. So, um, with a sexual addiction, even more so, because you have to overcome the addiction, but you still want to have sexuality in your life. So it is a like you have to learn how to balance that. And I think that in order to overcome your sexual addiction, first of all, it's just like any other addiction. You have to admit to yourself that you have a problem. You have to really look in the mirror and see where it is touching your life and where it is um, interfering, and how it, just like any addiction, it in the end it overcomes your whole being. You start maneuvering your life around the addiction. So from the morning, if you have this urge or a draw or an impulse from the morning, you're not going to be focused on your life. Let's say if you go to work, you're already trying to think of how you're going to get around your work so that you can bring your addiction in, or leave work early, or during, and how you're going to hide it from your spouse, and how you're going to incorporate it in your day without anybody knowing. The thing is that just like any addiction, when you're not there, when your mind is in the addiction, everything else falls to the ground because you're not really there. You're not present in your life when you are thinking about your addiction, or when you're thinking about your next fix, or when you're fantasizing in your mind. You're not present in your life. And so just like any addiction, you have to go deep and dig in and see what are the core causes of the addiction. I wrote a small book about my addiction with alcohol, and my own story and overcoming it, and the mind loops that an addict goes through that keeps them in place. And I think that like with any addiction, it's the same thing. We have to go deep within ourselves and see what is the core root, what is the core cause of the addiction. And when we have addictions, there are so many things that there are like these mind loops that hold us in place. And there's so much guilt, and there's so much shame and the hiding. And we're so busy in the guilt and the shame and the hiding that we aren't left with enough space we're so busy with trying to hide ourselves and being in the addiction, that we can't see the light that is around it. We can't see um, what is causing it, what are the core causes while we're in it. So we really have to uh, in the beginning of breaking an addiction, it's really just holding. It's really just holding and knowing that, okay, I don't want this addiction. And you kind of have to use your addictive personality in being addictive, in the knowing that I'm not going to be, holding. You can take that power and harness it. You can take that power and say, okay, I'm overcoming this, and that becomes your addiction. The holding. Okay, I'm going to allow this impulse to go through me while I hold, and it's not going to overtake me. And you start empowering yourself in that way. And then once you overcome the addiction and you're not in the behavior, you can start going through yourself and start coming out of it. But while you're in the addiction, you can't deal with the core causes because you're still getting an out. You're still getting the relief from the core causes. So you're not having to deal with them. It's giving you the release from them. It's allowing you not to cope. It's giving you the out. It's giving you the out, and then bringing in the guilt and the shame and the low the consequences of addiction, the low vibrational emotions, the hiding. So it keeps you in that loop. Once you break it, it's like sticking a stick in the spokes of your tire. Once you decide and you really realize, so the first step is to really just look in the mirror and realize where it is causing you, where it's harming you, where it is causing you not to be present in your life, where it is detrimental to you, where it is interfering with your life, especially if you have have fallen into the addiction, a sexual addiction from a very, very young age, then it can interfere with your adulthood, coming into building a family, building a relationship, marriage, a bond with others, being really intimately connected with anybody, because they're going to find out this addiction. And even with your sexual partners, it's not a real connection, it's more like a fix, and they're in it as a fix as well. So it's kind of like you can't really be true with anybody. And it's very, very lonely. Any kind of addiction is very, very lonely. And it's also a lonely, coming out of it is also very individual. You can seek out help, and you can seek out people that will um, hold your hand on the way, but your internal work is your internal work to do. And you're the only one that can do it, and you can do it knowing that you can do it. So I just kind of wanted to bring that subject out into the open and legitimatize it and give it kind of a stage, um, for the people that are dealing with it, and to um, kind of give it a voice. So I appreciate you watching, and sending you so much love and so much strength on your journey. Okay, I feel like I didn't sum that up. I want to do a quick add on that in order to overcome the addiction, a sexual addiction, it's just like any other addiction. Um, in the beginning, you must just completely stop, take control over it, set a certain amount of time. And because sexuality is going to be a part of your life, but you can introduce it back into your life once you have overcome the impulse part of it, once you have overcome the addictive part of it. So really, in order to overcome the addiction, it is to really just stop, to hold in that place, and to hold complete. That means the fantasies, the masturbation, the pornography, the sexual partners. It is to completely stop for a set amount of time, um, so that you can allow yourself to heal from the addictive part of it. And then you can slowly introduce it back into your life in a healthy way, which might be, in order not to fall back into old patterns, then it could be with setting up that you only have uh, sexual encounters with a a partner that you are dedicated to and with, and who knows about the addiction and accepts you in it, and is willing to help you through it, or not even help you through it, but is willing to be a partner in it with you. So it's really about breaking the cycle. It's like sticking a stick in your spokes, breaking the cycle and overcoming the addictive part of it, so that you can introduce it back into your life. So I just wanted to add that in. So thank you for watching.